Hey guys, kembali lagi di podcast Dejet, podcastnya orang-orang Dota di Indonesia. Game yang kata komunitas pesimis di Indonesia udah mati, tapi padahal masih rame-rame aja sih sebenarnya. Dan bahkan Indonesia sendiri udah punya wakilnya di dunia internasional di 2 tahun terakhir, baik tim maupun organisasi. Daripada lama-lama dengerin intro, mendingan kita langsung ketemu aja sama bintang tamu kita di episode kali ini.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back again to my podcast channel. Papa Dejet here, and as you can see on the side of your monitor or maybe your phones, there is a coach from Army Genesis, CV. He wants me to call him a CV. So, hello CV, how are you? It's pleasure to invite you here too. So and also have you here to talk about what is happening with Army Genesis on the last second of the DPC run on the spring run. And yeah, I think let's start about. I'm not gonna put the main course on the frontliner here. I'm just gonna talk about a little bit. Yeah, I think let's introduce you to the audience. You can take this minute to introduce yourself, and then when you start for the career of the coaching, and then why you come back to AG after the last TI. I do remember that you leave AG for some times, and then you back again to AG. The time is yours.
Coached him as a trial for 2 weeks. Organization called Cloud9. That was with Eternal Envy and Pilot Die and all those fantastic guys that I love. Obviously, I had a very close and familiar relationship with them in the scene. So immediately after EG decided that they didn't want to coach at the time, Cloud9 offered me the position. I want to say the rest is history, but it's quite long. Obviously, I've had my on and on stints of coaching as well as professionally competing for the next few years after that, from 2014 to about 2016, 2017. And then I kind of returned specifically to coaching for the rest of my career, returning to VJ Storm and Iceberg and all these other like smaller circuit teams also. From then I've coached Mineski, a Mexican roster named Zalotto, to help a friend who owned the business. I mentioned Mineski, Zalotto. Boom Esports obviously was since COVID. NIP, Ninjas in Pajamas. There's honestly, the list is quite long. But I've basically coached over 50 players in my career, 50 different players. And I believe that I'm the longest tenured coach that's in the scene, and I've coached the most players in terms of variety, because I've tended to kind of jump teams where I thought was possibly like a better fit for myself, or other circumstances. Since COVID, working online has become a staple at the time, and so I try to gander into Southeast Asia. That's my tenure with Boom Esports. That's when I coached them for a year and a half online. We came very close to qualifying for TI or qualifying to multiple majors or DPC events. Unfortunately, a lot of second places. After that, actually, I was reflecting on my career, whether I wanted to continue with Dota or not, because in my mind, I'm thinking that Dota's kind of past its halfway stage. It's like we have TI 12 coming up now. And TI 12 is like certainly not the first half of TIs, right? It's probably like the latter half of TIs. So yeah, I'm thinking about all the future and stuff, but in the end, I couldn't really leave this game. I had a couple offers on the table for online coaching, and I kind of wanted to try Southeast Asia again after Boom Esports, despite not initially wanting to stay with Boom again, and therefore not renewing my contract. Because I felt that it could give me the autonomy that I was looking for, and it just let myself be me. Gave me a lot of control, gave me a lot of trust from the players. I also like the structure of organizations hiring coaches. We live in a scene where there are players that will decide to coach in like a unison agreement, and if the player decides that they don't like you, like the players that you're coaching suddenly become your boss, right? And I feel like that's kind of like the wrong order of things. So AG came to me in as an org, among other things, and I accepted and coached them for online for 2 circuits. Eventually, I came here to boot camp on the 3rd circuit of last year. once again, one loss before we could make Division One, and then finally we made the roster change this year, and I returned after my Sonics tenure at TI as well, to try and make it work. And ever since, the 7-0 victory in the Division Two last season, which was quite nice, quite a big morale booster, and unfortunately, this season we came
Yep.
one game shy of qualifying to the majors. So that was a
Yeah,
big blow.
one win away. Everyone want to talk about it. All the fans, even the haters, like it's really unfortunate that AG cannot go to the major, because on the first season of Division One, you guys doing pretty well. Some loses. I think it's I don't know what is happening between the match of AG and also Talon, and then for the SMG, and then also the last one. So let's start the
Mm.
main course here. So, I mean, like, is the player that you bring on the table last season, I mean, like last year supposed to be, I said, when AG one win away to qualify for the first division. What is the difference? I mean,
Mm.
like, the player is different, but what makes this player is way much better, which is you guys have the 7-0 point on the table.
Yeah. So I guess for the details, you have to look at the specifics, right? You have to look at the changes that we actually made. So
Mm-hmm.
for example, mid lane position, we went from Azura, who is a very talented mid player. We switched over to Yoe, who is one of the highest ranked players, and I guess arguably a Filipino superstar.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at least I think his status can be achieved as that. I think the mid lane position change is quite big. I think Yoe is a little more volatile, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
The range is higher, and it's like the ceiling is higher, but sometimes it can look a little unstable. But
Unstable.
once you refine these kind of gems, I think the product will be some of the best things that you can look for. And these Pinoy mids, right? They kind of take over the world in terms of you got Arma going to Secret now too, right? And Abid has always
Yes.
been the staple. So yeah, I think the team, Varese and I especially believed in Yoe's ability, and I think he has more than proved enough that he can hang with the top dogs here. So I'm very happy to have Yoe here. For the carry position, we made the switch. We actually had our carry player DB
Mm-hmm.
switch to the offlane, and we brought In Your Dream Kiki.
Mm-hmm.
Kiki is a very experienced player. I think Kiki's identity is kind of set. He's kind of like a stern rock, like a stable rock in terms of what he offers a team and how he plays his carry role usually. We're actually working to change that perspective a bit and kind of like open him up and broaden him up to less of the tradition, but more of the progressive
Okay.
ways of looking at the carry position. I think traditionally Kiki is known to play like the Terrorblades, the Morphlings, the Spectres. And on this version of AG, I think a lot of people saw like the Pudge, the Ursa, the Barcy,
Mm-hmm.
not the hardest of carries, but definitely has a lot of firepower. So we're working on that, and I think this change was also big because DB has been a fantastic player, and I think anyone who's heard me talk publicly about DB knows how much faith I have in him. Um, but as a carry player at the time, he was very inexperienced, and I think that the construction of the team wasn't really towards his benefit. I think with this off lane change, he has a lot more freedom. He
Mm-hmm.
can work with me more closely because I can kind of mold him to the position. Whereas before I came to this team, he's already playing carry for like a year or so, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
kind of has his own ideas. So we're still working on that, but I think it's been a good ride, a good progress. And then I guess the last change is for currently Geek Slate Narman to Joachim.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't actually know what to expect of Joachim. I haven't really worked with Joachim. I know I coached Boom for a very short time, like 2, 3 weeks for TI qualifiers back in like 3, 4 years ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
But um, I never really interact with Joachim, and the once he came to this team, I realized how much of a beast this man can be. Uh, I think Joe has been uh I want to say like the highest standard average in terms of what he has displayed in skill level. I think he's been very consistent. I think a lot of the fans might realize like he's been playing a lot of tiny and some of the toss backs and some of his four steps and just the way he clicks his buttons, very high skill player. He's actually changed the outcome of a lot of these games towards our favor, and I have a lot of respect for him for that. No disrespect to Narman, of course. I think Narman is actually one of the scariest killer players in Southeast Asia. They're very kill hungry, and they can always find these small openings, these cracks
Mm-hmm.
to take advantage. And it's unfortunate what's happening with Geek Slate now, but again, I got a lot of respect for that guy, and so I think uh, it's a difference in terms of players and their styles. But I think Joe and I might work together better because we have a more calm approach to the game. So I think
Okay.
the combination of these factors and these changes is what led us to have a successful Tour 1 in Division 2, and
Oh,
possibly, a moderate amount of success in Division 1. I
okay.
know we came one game shy of winning, right? But I think for a lot of people, we did surpass expectations, and it's not like these players like played super poorly and we just massively disappointed or anything like that. So I'm very proud of my guys and looking forward to the Bali major at this point.
Okay, because yeah, talking about Bali major, it's gonna be the last major before going to TI. And the big picture is, I think this is not everyone talk about, because everyone always talk about the bad things rather than the good things, even though it's the small things. Because you already
Mhm.
have the things that you don't ever have it as an organization, as Army Genesis. You guys already have the DPC point right now. That's the something that you can
Yeah,
take for
yeah,
going
it's
for the TI, right?
absolutely. It's the first time this team has ever had DPC points, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that already is a plus. Now, obviously, our goal is not that. Our goal is much, much higher, much above.
Of
There's a big
course.
sign on the wall behind me. I'm not sure if you can see it, but you can see the big print of the Aegis, and it says at the bottom, "We will be there." And I've been looking at this thing for many months now,
Mm-hmm.
wondering at times if it could be. But I really believe in these guys, and of course, I have a lot of confidence in my own ability as well. I've been
Mm-hmm.
to many TIs myself,
Mm-hmm.
as a competitor as well as a spectator, and I think these guys have what it takes. I think we just need to blend better for next season. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we made some critical mistakes this season, of which I can go into details based on the question.
Okay.
But yeah, in terms of the negatives, it's like, when you do something right, nobody will really notice you've done anything at all, right?
Okay.
So, I understand that some of the fans or some of the fans or other people engaged with AG might be disappointed in the
Mm-hmm.
result. I personally, for me, it was actually one of the most difficult results to take in as well, because I'm 30 years old now. I've coached for 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've been through a share of failures, and the Dungeons and Dragons, the movie that's out right now, there's a line that says, "I'm a champion of failure," and that's me. I've these guys are still young. They're gonna have more heartbreaking losses in the future, but the truth
Mm-hmm.
is, I've been through so much more of these, and it's never better any time.
Okay.
It's never any easier every time, right?
Okay.
But you just you keep your head up and you realize that you can get there as long as your plan, your ability, your practice is good. Yeah, so we're still trying.
Okay. Keep trying until you guys will be on the TI, of course, because that's the banner
Hmm.
saying on the behind you. So talk about the failure. Let's start with the another main course here. The first match that you guys lose on the DPC this season, which is
Yeah,
against supposed to be Talon.
Talon.
Yes, Talon
Yeah,
0-2. What is happening? Because the game is quite long, which is 45 minutes average on
yeah.
that two games. You guys lost 2-0.
Hmm.
Pretty much the hero pool that you guys pick is quite different between game one and also
Yeah,
game two. But the Talon is
right.
having a similar opening hero, which is Ayo and also Lasrak. Can you share a little bit about the story of that losing perspective?
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bit of history with that. The Epos Gaming and Talent, I don't know the exact details, but I spoke to their manager, I spoke to the admins, or our manager spoke to the admins. Our schedule was supposed to be Bleed, our first series, which we won 2-1. And it was
Okay.
actually supposed to be Geek Slate next in the same week, 4 days
Oh.
later. Um, that was the initial schedule, but at some point that got changed 1 or 2 days before the tournament itself to have Talon slotted suddenly. We were supposed to play Talon initially on March 29th, and that got changed
Oh.
to literally the first week. So we have a scenario now where AG is playing the first match of the day,
Mhm.
um, against two of the three major qualified teams.
Exactly.
We're playing blind against these guys. I looked at Talon's history, for example, on a very short prep time. I see that they have zero IO games and didn't particularly struggle or lose to it either. I understand that Gaiman Gladiators basically won the major with less IO along with Lena and all these other things, but it's like, suddenly I have in the first week more than three teams to prepare for, of which Talon and Geek Slate, I do not have any information since the major whatsoever, right? Like Geek Slate has not played like competitive Dota for like 14 days straight at that point. And AG is playing their third match against Geek Slate. AG is playing their second match against Talon. They've already seen what we're going to use in DPC, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the IO, I will be honest, it caught me kind of off guard. In my
Okay.
mind, I was thinking that if they do IO, we'll just do some variation of TA plus one or Undying plus one, but it
Nice.
wasn't something that I had particularly planned for.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I think with the unfairness of the schedule, the sudden change, along with the fact that they were playing a strategy that I didn't really expect them to play, or don't really have a history of playing, it did catch me a little off guard. It caught us as a team off guard. As you say, the games did go long, however,
Mm-hmm.
and in terms of detail for Talon specifically, in that first game, the last pick actually came down to Alchemist or Abaddon, and I made the call to play Abaddon. We have even though we haven't practiced it because I was watching a replay that morning, where Team Spirit actually played against one of the weaker Eastern Europe. I think one move it was.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the Alchemist play against the Abaddon, and the Abaddon actually outscales the Alchemist because they both play with this radiance and net worth advantage kind of thing, except Alchemist kind of tends to fall off, right? Like this hero is fantastic at getting the net worth advantage, but that's all he has because he has no real innate carry abilities. There's no stuns, there's no slows, there's no agility scaling, right?
Okay.
Whereas the Abaddon against Faceless Void, which is what Talon already picked,
Mm-hmm.
Abaddon is a very hard chrono target for Faceless Void. Like you can't really chrono him because he has borrowed time,
Yes.
right? And it'll just auto activate. So it's in a sense it's a counter. It also gives us frontline against the Leshrac, and at the time I believe that Batrider was one of the hardest counters to Leshrac.
Mm-hmm.
I played TI with Sonics,
Mm-hmm.
and if you remember the current major winner Quinn,
Mm-hmm.
shout out to Quinn by the way, fantastic player. Um, had a lot of knowledge to share with me. You know, he's a 12K MMR player. He's from NA, just like myself. You know, we kind of have like the homegrown blood together.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he's. I think people respect and understand how good this guy is at the mid lane right now. And there's a lot of matchups that he would give me specific details on, and we would discuss and try to figure out. But for sure, one of the counters to Leshrac, one of the strongest counters to Leshrac is Bad Rider in the game of Dota 2. The other ones like Death
Okay.
Prophet and etc. We don't really play as a team. So we went for the Bad Rider option, which I think people who watch season one of AG should know that we're very comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, it wasn't enough. We tried the Bat Rider Silencer with the Abaddon. We were
Mm-hmm.
able to take Roshan, but we didn't because I think my players told me after the first game they felt the pressure of the match. And again, you know, it's DPC, right? It's all the practice that you do. This is the moment that you play for, and people are gonna be nervous. You know, players get nervous. That's only reality. I get nervous too.
Okay.
The only thing that can help you with this usually is just more practice and letting time kind of work its magic, and you kind of just get used to it. And you know, so you know that famous line from Bane in Dark Knight in the Batman movies. I was molded by the darkness, right? It's basically like that, it's
Okay.
not everyone's gonna just come into the scene, right? Like in your dream, like Kiki did, just win his
Mm-hmm.
first tournament. It's a gradual process, and
Yeah.
I think that the Talon series was a real eye opener at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But we lost the first game due to the outscaling, the eventual outscaling, as well as a couple of misstepped team fights. And I think game two went really, really long. We had, in my opinion, a fantastic draft against what they had. They kind of could fall off with their Death Prophet, Leshrac. They have like too many similar heroes, and their team fight could put a lot of pressure on them because they don't have
Mm-hmm.
enough catch. It allows our Timbersaw and Templar Assassin to get very aggressive. There were times that we did like tiny toss initiations on like the Death Prophet and stuff, but we weren't able to precast the Hex before she was able to click BKB after
Yes.
landing on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's these things, for example, like can be prevented. We actually talked about it in practice where right now, at the top of the screen in Dota 2, right, you see the 10 heroes portraits.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Like for example, when you're playing Oracle against Silencer, one of the things you can do is you can always click yourself on the portrait before you think the global silence is coming and stuff like that, or click other heroes if they're in the middle of like
Oh.
a very clumped up team fight, right? Like you just click the portrait and it can auto target. So
Okay.
like in these moments, for example, like if the player was able to execute these things where we click the hex on the target, like
Mm-hmm.
the target that's tossed in the air that we can't click,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you just click the portrait, it will work. But at the time, like we weren't able to execute these kind of things. And maybe this is like a thin line of execution, but this is one of those things where if players get used to it, it'll
Mm-hmm.
just become a part of them now. And that's kind of like what takes them to the next level.
Okay.
So mistakes like these happened a lot. I think there were like three instances where we started the fight, but
Mm-hmm.
wasn't able to like chain stun them because we made some misclicks or mistakes or miscommunication, whatever. So yeah, I think that first game, Talon, I think they kind of caught me off guard. I'll
Mm-hmm.
accept that one as gracious as I can. But
Mm-hmm.
that second game, I think it went long, and I think we probably should have won that game.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the truth is, Talon's a fantastic team, right? They just came out of a top replacement at the major. They beat some really really great teams, really powerful teams.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's it would be a little bit early for us if we were able to just take them down just like that. So
Yeah.
I think the growth is still organic. I know the 0-2 kind of looks bad, but like I said, our schedule was uh pit pretty negatively towards us. It was very
Okay.
unfavorable for us. And in the end, we still managed to come out 2-1 in the first week. Geek
Yep.
Slate, Talon, as well as Bleed. So I think that was honestly that was still a blessing in disguise, and I'm happy about what the guys did in that week.
Okay. So let's move on to the week two because you guys take
Hmm.
one lose on the week two against SMG.
Hmm.
Yeah, again, SMG. Just quick one. What is happening on that match? Because a lot of people think that on paper and then also on the performance matter, AG is supposed to be come out as on top SMG, but somehow SMG crush AG on that match.
Uh, my To answer to the first statement there regarding the expectation of AG beating SMG,
Mm-hmm.
I think people who are not practicing with these teams or playing in this division don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily understand the power. So I think, for
Oh.
example, SMG has taken a big reputation hit ever since the Ninja Boogie mid one situation, right? what
Oh.
people tend to what people tend to forget when they consider these things as an org and just kind of get into like mindless hating or whatever is that this, for example, this mid one guy, this guy's a he has won many tournaments, many
Amazing.
majors, many big events. Yeah, there's a reason why SMG is still backing this guy as the main guy, despite the drama that has happened. That should tell you something, if you're thinking about it. uh, there are a lot of really fantastic players on that team.
Okay.
I have coached Moon on Mineski for 3 months, and I know how underrated this guy is. This guy actually won a major in China against some of the most stacked Chinese teams at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since, he's kind of been in the top circuit, hanging around Fnatic, the likes of,
Exactly.
TNC, that type of teams. He's never been on TNC, but Mineski, Fnatic, and then now he's on SMG, right, with the same management from Mineski. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
like the people who, if you know, it's one of those things where this guy is actually a beast. He's one of the players that I actually still keep in touch with, still communicate with on a frequent basis every few weeks. Just shoot him a message, he shoots me a message back. We got a lot of respect for each other there, and
Mm-hmm.
honestly, their support duo with the new pickup Afu and Polison. These guys are competitors, man. If you watch how they play support, they have this safe lane Earthshaker that nobody
Mm-hmm.
else runs, and he always just has massive impact. He just gets this shard at 15 minutes, just has a 3 second uh continuous stun. No other teams play this. So I can understand that some fans would have really liked to have seen AG take down SMG, but even the truth is, in practice and in scrims, SMG are probably about 75-25 against us.
Okay.
They beat us, and we learn a lot from them in general. So it's a little unfortunate that the games look a little less competitive than what they could have been. But yeah, they had our number at the time, and I think
Okay.
that in terms of prep, I actually think that what we did was correct. I guess, would you like me to go into detail, like the Tinker pick? I'm sure
The
many
Tinker
people are confused
pick.
about that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So we tried that Tinker strategy
Mm-hmm.
uh in scrims 3 times. And we won every time, very easily too. Most games were
Okay.
about 25-30 minutes. Yeah, the execution was that just, Yowie he would just have a fantastic lane, which he did, most of the time, even against SMG.
Yes.
And then he'll be able to rotate from 6 to 8 minutes already. It's like the coddle. You just come into one of these side lanes with this 500 extra damage burst, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of heroes that are just not ready for this. The trick to running this Tinker in competitive, similar to like the old days of Mid Alchemist and whatever, is that you want to win the side lanes so
Mm-hmm.
that even if the Tinker doesn't have the best lane, he has somewhere to rotate to. It's not really about his lane, it's about what comes after. I do believe that we actually crafted that.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some major mishaps. So for example, like I think uh trying to refresh my memory here. I think in game one,
Uh-huh.
DB played Nature's Prophet.
Correct.
DB is one of the few Nature's Prophet players that's basically Grandmaster. It's actually one of his best heroes as well, and
Wow.
until that point, even in practice or real matches, he never loses a Furion lane, you know. But that game, I think what happened was Jokan was playing Doom, which is not something that we have practiced too often. But we expected the
Yes.
Morphling pick coming because that's what they did in the past against Furion. So
Mm-hmm.
I picked Doom as an insurance to this Morphling because if the Morphling can't go in or if he's scared of going in because he has to buy too many items like Lincoln's BKB and all these things because he has to play against Tinker as well, right?
Correct.
Assuming that we were planning to play Tinker against Morphling. Um, then the logic is that we would just be stronger in a ball. Unfortunately, like for example, DB's Nature's Prophet gave up 3 kills in 6 minutes in that lane, partly due to us not being used to that lane, partly due to Jokam not being connected with DB at the time in terms of the lane phase, leaving him alone, and then SMG
Yes.
just immediately jumping on that like sharks, right? So they executed that quite well, and I think we made some mishaps that allowed it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously it makes the Tinker's rotation a little bit weaker because if the MP is not able to bully the carry out or push the tower, then we have less space to operate with. And honestly, they really did some really fantastic things. Like this mid lane Pango, for example. Nowadays, the build is basically mana boost straight into Diffusal just because of the synergy with the Swashbuckle.
Mm-hmm.
But Moon that game, he realized that they just needed team fight to catch our Tinker, so he went mana boost straight into Blink Dagger as a mid lane Pangolier. All these small decisions, I don't think the fans might notice very often.
Mm-hmm.
But these really, really fantastic players, they in these clutch moments, they make these decisions to just give them that extra edge, right? And with
Mm-hmm.
SMG, you know, the small edges like this and how they took the team fights against us, I think ultimately broke our Tinker in
Okay.
both game 1 and 2. And I think obviously when game 2 came, you know, they picked this last pick Mars, and we have the option between Storm and Tinker, and I have to make the choice. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, maybe we don't want to give them the same game, you know, play Tinker against this kind of like mediocre team fight lineup that they have with little
Mm-hmm.
catch against Tinker. Even though it's a good Tinker game, maybe, you know, Storm is just, you know, we've practiced Storm too, right? But in that moment, Yoe actually said, guys, is it fine? I think Tinker's still so amazing here, you know. And
Okay.
when a player gives me that kind of like green light of confidence, you know, I'm just feeling it. You know what I mean? I think to myself that at the end of the day, this guy's gonna play the hero. If he feels that this can be good for him, then I want to enable that vision as much as possible. So we actually did go to Tinker. In hindsight, obviously, I can regret since the loss that we probably should have picked Storm there because they just don't have any catch in general. It's just
Mm-hmm.
a Rubik. And Tinker and Storm both interact very well with that, obviously. But yeah, the Mars that they played against our Tinker mid, he lost the lane, and then he put a lot of pressure us on the map because he has this arena and he's staying in fog. So again, I think SMG did a lot of things that people don't notice,
Mm-hmm.
that brought these games into this favor. Because from at least from my understanding as a strategist, you know, heroes like Morphling, they struggle very hard against a Tinker. You know, it's like if you can't catch this hero in high MMR brackets, people know how painful and scary it can be.
Sure.
But yeah, competitive Dota is always a different beast. And when you're playing with the added amount of pressure and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you normally don't play the same game that you would in a pub or in a scrim.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think SMG definitely came out ahead that day, and I am sorry to disappoint, but you know, I told Yoei immediately after the series, if you want Tinker next time, I'm picking it for sure. You know, I'm not the type of guy
Oh.
that gets shy. I'm not the type of guy that gets shy from like a loss or two. As long as your logic and foundation is correct, you will keep beating it on until you make it right.
Okay.
Because you should be right. You know, you're not a dumb
Yes.
player. You're a smart player. You've played this matchup before and you understand that you just couldn't do it this time. That does not mean you lose faith in your understanding or your capability as a player.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
perfect. That's perfect word that coming from a coach, I think, to the players, because sometimes it's not me, but somehow I look at the YouTube comments or on the live chat when AG played, they think
Hmm.
that the pick is not comfortable for the players. But I think hearing this from you directly, I think it's the players that won the pick, not the coach that forcing the pick to the players, right? Because I think
Hmm.
it's a mutual agreement between the players and also the coach to pick this hero to make this work. And then if the players confident with the hero, the pick, and then it's gonna be work. But somehow, as you said previously, not this time, not this time. You make
Yeah.
it work. Mhm. But I think it's, yeah, it is what it is. For and then the next one, you guys, again, this is the most heartbreaker for all fans, the players, you, the management, and everyone inside the AG, that you guys come up short for one win away to major. You guys win.
Yeah.
I'm not say easily on the game one, because that's a fight that coming from the execution that dragged the game to the 36 minute, and somehow in the
Hmm.
second game you guys get beat up for the just only 22 minutes on the second games, and
Yeah.
then try to force the game 3, like, guys, we're not gonna give up in this match until 41 minute, and then still lose the games because of the time duration. I just want to give you um, short time to explain this, what is happening between you, the players, on the specifically on the third match. I mean, like, the third game number 3, that makes you guys lose that game. CV, on you.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So before you put the focus on third game, which is fine for me,
Mhm.
I think I should give some context to this series.
Okay.
Obviously, this is like the major decider. It puts a lot of pressure on players in general. Again, I've been in this spot 100 times, so it's, I might feel some emotions, but at the end of the day, it's another day in the business. Um, I think this series kind of proved something for me that I made a mistake in the earlier series. Is that yeah, we're talking about just now the choice that it comes down to, right, between the coach and the player.
Okay.
One of the reasons I actually came to Southeast Asia is because I do believe in myself, and I felt that this region lacks leadership. I know if anyone's watched like interviews from Heen and all these other things who have also coached in Southeast Asia, people know, generally like the limitations from this region is not the capability and the individual skill of players who are basically getting poached around the world anyway. The limitation is usually the culture as well as how they view the game itself, and there's just not enough of a leadership to give them the vision and put them together in these games sometimes, right? I feel like I bring that to the table, and again, that's kind of why I enjoy this region and probably want to continue. But in Execution Game 1, if you see, we won that game, as you said. Maybe you might not call it easy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a pretty one-sided stomp, right? I think
Correct.
they have this anti-mage pick, which they banned against Coddle when they had Coddle before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm a Coddle spammer. It's actually one of my favorite heroes. And in my mind, this is one of the most broken heroes in the game of Dota 2. Um, we actually were ready to play the Coddle against SMG, but DB at the time told me that he's not ready. He didn't want to play. My mistake is not forcing it on him, actually, because we're basically, I think we're 7-0 in scrims with Coddle. I have a very strong understanding of how to run this hero. We've
Mm-hmm.
done a very large amount of lane practice, probably like 2 to 3 hours invested into lane practice of Coddle and different matchups against Coddle, both on mid and in the off lane.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you might have seen SMG run the Coddle mid with Greaves. You might have seen people from other circuits run this Coddle mid, um, run the Coddle off lane now. Gaming Gladiators do it too. But yeah, this Coddle is very, very powerful too. And I still believe it's one of the most powerful heroes in the game. So I think Execution were kind of unprepared for that. They were Coddle players, but they didn't realize that AG played Coddle. So yeah, when we took the Coddle, I think they were already kind of shook and they picked this anti-mage into this Coddle, but we've already done lane practice to determine that anti-mage does not beat Coddle. In fact, it's the other way around because
Mm-hmm.
AIM is a very sustained dependent hero. And you would think that AIM would just blink on a Coddle and just smack him, burn his mana and stuff, but that's basically never how it goes. If you have the correct position for, that's melee. This AIM is actually very scared because his HP pool is so low and
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't have Ring of Health until a long time.
Yes.
So we did exactly what we practiced there. We also had Kunkka, Night Stalker, Coilers, and the other lanes against Anti-Mage, which also are very favorite against Anti-Mage.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that game was a very clean response to their lack of preparation for that series or for that Coddle at least.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we took that swift victory. Game 2, without putting too much focus in, was kind of a
I'm sorry,
mistake on my
Claire.
part.
Before you continue about the game 2 and also game 3, let's take a break a little bit,
Yeah,
and then we continue again.
sure.